I feel the need for speed.
Have you ever wondered how one movie could change fashion, military recruitment, and even create scenes people still imitate nearly 40 years later? Top Gun, 1986, wasn't just another action blockbuster. Behind its iconic moments were dangerous accidents, impossible filming challenges, and surprising decisions that almost changed movie history forever. Here are 15 secrets you didn't know. First, a pilot sacrificed his life to make this film. Long before audiences watched Maverick lose control during the film's unforgettable flat spin sequence, tragedy had already struck behind the scenes. Legendary aerobatic pilot Art Scholl was hired to capture authentic aerial footage that simply couldn't be recreated with miniatures or visual effects. During one flight over the Pacific Ocean in 1985, Scholl intentionally entered a flat spin to film the maneuver. But this time, something went terribly wrong. Radio transmissions revealed that he was unable to recover the aircraft. Moments later, both the plane and the pilot disappeared into the ocean. Neither was ever recovered, and investigators were never able to determine exactly what caused the crash. The finished film quietly honors Scholl during its closing credits, making him the only person to give his life while helping bring Top Gun to the big screen. Every time that dramatic flat spin sequence appears, it carries far more emotional weight than most viewers ever realize. Secondly, Tom Cruise had never ridden a motorcycle before becoming Maverick. Today, it's impossible to separate Maverick from his black Kawasaki racing alongside an F-14. The scene looks effortless, but before filming began, Tom Cruise had never ridden a motorcycle. Not once. To prepare for the role, he took lessons at a California motorcycle dealership and learned the basics from scratch. Within weeks, he was confidently riding one of the fastest production motorcycles in the world, the Kawasaki GPZ 900R Ninja. That single sequence didn't just establish Maverick's rebellious personality. It helped transform the Ninja into one of the most recognizable motorcycles of the 1980s and permanently linked Tom Cruise with speed, both on the ground and in the air. Thirdly, Val Kilmer genuinely didn't want to become Iceman. Most actors dream of landing a major Hollywood role. Val Kilmer did the exact opposite. After reading the script, he felt the story was too simplistic and wasn't interested in appearing in another military film. During his audition, he intentionally gave a flat, emotionless performance, hoping Paramount would reject him. Instead, the studio cast him anyway because he was still under contract. Ironically, that reluctant decision produced one of cinema's greatest rivalries. Kilmer even developed his own backstory for Iceman and added subtle touches, including the famous teeth-clenching habit, that made the character unforgettable. The role he tried hardest to avoid eventually became one of the defining performances of his career. Fourthly, most of the famous cockpit scenes are actually a trick to deceive the audience. Those intense close-up shots make it look as if Tom Cruise and the cast are speaking while flying thousands of feet above the ground. In reality, that would have been impossible. The roar of the F-14 engines completely drowned out every line of dialogue. Instead, filmmakers built a full-scale cockpit replica mounted on a mechanical platform inside a hangar. Crew members rocked the cockpit, sprayed water onto the actors to imitate sweat, and carefully recreated the feeling of high-speed flight. Meanwhile, a spectacular aerial footage outside the cockpit was filmed separately by real Navy pilots. The final result blended practical filmmaking with authentic aviation so seamlessly that audiences never noticed the illusion. The fifth thing is that almost the entire film crew suffered from motion sickness. Top Gun made flying fighter jets look thrilling. Living through it was a very different experience. When the actors were finally allowed to experience real F-14 flights, most of them became violently airsick almost immediately. Tom Cruise threw up during his very first flight after a pilot pushed the aircraft through aggressive maneuvers. Many of the cast had similar experiences, discovering that looking cool in aviator sunglasses was much easier than surviving the forces real naval aviators endure every day. Only one major cast member escaped without getting sick: Anthony Edwards, the actor who played Goose. While everyone else struggled to keep their stomachs under control, he calmly handled every flight, earning the unofficial title of having the strongest stomach on the entire production. Number 6. The famous inverted flight was impossible. Few moments in Top Gun are more unforgettable than Maverick flipping his F-14 upside down directly above an enemy MiG before giving the pilot a cheeky middle finger. It became one of the defining images of the movie, but according to real Navy aviators, it also broke the laws of physics. Flying that close with two fighter jets would have been almost impossible. The powerful airflow between the aircraft could easily have pulled them together, while the F-14 itself wasn't designed to remain inverted for very long before fuel problems appeared. Instead of risking lives, the filmmakers relied on clever movie magic. The MiG footage was filmed separately, while Maverick's upside-down jet was added later through optical compositing. It may not have been real, but it delivered exactly what Tony Scott wanted, an image audiences would never forget. The 7th scene, featuring volleyball, almost disappeared from the film. Today, the beach volleyball sequence is one of the first scenes people remember when someone mentions Top Gun. Surprisingly, Paramount executives thought it added nothing to the story. Director Tony Scott disagreed. Rather than focusing on dialogue, he wanted to show the confidence, friendship, and fierce rivalry between Maverick and Iceman without putting either of them inside a cockpit. Filmed during the golden hour, with the cast covered in water and baby oil to catch the sunlight, the sequence became pure 1980s movie magic. What was once considered unnecessary filler eventually became one of the film's most recognizable moments. 8th, Top Gun saved Ray-Ban from being forgotten. Before Gun, Ray-Ban Aviators had fallen badly out of fashion. Sales were shrinking, and the once iconic sunglasses were beginning to feel outdated. Then Tom Cruise put on a pair. Within months of the film's release, Aviator sales surged, turning the glasses into one of the hottest fashion accessories in America. Suddenly, everyone wanted Maverick's look. Decades later, the same thing happened again after Top Gun Maverick arrived in theaters, proving that one movie could revive an entire brand, not once, but twice. 9thly, the fearsome MiGs in the movie were actually American aircraft. The enemy fighters looked intimidating, but they weren't Soviet aircraft at all. Because Hollywood had no access to real MiGs, the production used American-built Northrop F-5 fighters that the U.S. Navy already flew for training exercises. Painted black and decorated with red stars, they became the fictional MiG-28. Most audiences never questioned it, yet aviation enthusiasts quickly noticed there had never been a real Soviet fighter with that designation. One of the movie's greatest villains was, in reality, playing dress-up. 10thly, Paramount spent millions of dollars just to borrow actual airplanes. Computer-generated aircraft weren't an option in 1986, so Tony Scott insisted on filming with the real thing. Paramount paid the U.S. Navy millions of dollars for access to F-14 Tomcats, aircraft carriers, and Naval Air Station Miramar. Every hour an F-14 took to the sky cost thousands of dollars, making every aerial sequence incredibly expensive. It was a huge gamble for a movie with a relatively modest budget, but that investment paid off. Nearly 4 decades later, the breathtaking realism of Top Gun's flying scenes still holds up better than many modern action films, created almost entirely with CGI. The 11th scene is the most famous love scene in the film, and it was filmed after the movie was completed. Most people assume Maverick and Charlie's romantic scene was always part of Top Gun. It wasn't. After early test screenings, Audiences in Chicago felt the romance wasn't convincing enough. The filmmakers suddenly needed another love scene, but production had already wrapped months earlier. Tom Cruise was filming another movie, and Kelly McGillis had already dyed her blonde hair dark brown. Tony Scott solved the problem with pure creativity. McGillis wore a baseball cap to hide her new hairstyle, while the intimate bedroom scene was filmed almost entirely in blue lighting and deep shadows, so viewers wouldn't notice the continuity differences. What began as a last-minute fix became one of the most iconic romantic scenes of the entire decade. The 12th point is that it all started with just one article. Without a magazine article published in 1983, Top Gun might never have existed. Writer Ehud Yonai spent time with real Navy fighter pilots and documented their intense training in an article called Top Guns for California Magazine. Producers Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer immediately recognized its cinematic potential and purchased the film rights within weeks. Ironically, many writers and directors initially rejected the project because they couldn't imagine audiences caring about fighter pilots. Hollywood nearly missed one of the biggest blockbusters of the 1980s before anyone had even written the screenplay. 13th place goes to Top Gun Maverick, which has surpassed the original. Making a sequel after 36 years sounded like an impossible mission. Instead, Top Gun Maverick became one of the greatest comeback stories in Hollywood history. The film earned nearly $1.5 billion worldwide, received far stronger reviews than the original, and even secured a nomination for Best Picture at the Academy Awards, something almost unheard of for a summer action blockbuster. For many fans, the sequel didn't simply continue Maverick's story. It reminded the world why the original film had become a cultural phenomenon in the first place. The 14th one is Top Gun, which became the most successful recruitment campaign Hollywood has ever created. When moviegoers walked out of theaters in 1986, many found something waiting outside that they never expected. U.S. Navy recruiters. The timing was no accident. Recruiters set up booths near theaters while audiences were still excited from the film's breathtaking flying scenes. Interest in naval aviation surged almost overnight, and many new applicants admitted Top Gun had inspired them to consider a military career. Very few movies have ever influenced real-life career choices on such a massive scale. And finally, the 15th point is that Top Gun didn't just make a movie. It made a legend. Countless action movies have featured fighter jets, but very few have changed popular culture the way Top Gun did. It transformed aviator sunglasses into a fashion icon, made superbikes cooler than ever, introduced unforgettable quotes and characters, and turned Maverick into one of cinema's greatest heroes. Nearly 40 years later, its influence can still be seen in movies, television, fashion, and even military aviation. That's the true legacy of Top Gun. It wasn't simply a blockbuster from 1986. It became the movie that convinced generations of audiences that flying faster, dreaming bigger, and refusing to back down would always look incredibly cool. Nearly 4 decades later, Top Gun remains far more than a classic action movie. Its unforgettable characters, breathtaking aerial sequences, and incredible behind-the-scenes stories continue to inspire new generations of fans. Which fact surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more unforgettable movie secrets.